The story of global trade is shifting, but not in the way most headlines suggest. It isn't just about China's Belt and Road projects or America's security promises. Something bigger is happening quietly across the Indian Ocean. India and Africa are building one of the fastest growing economic partnerships in the world. And it's not just about trade numbers. This alliance is about ports, energy, scholarships, railways, and a vision of shared growth that could challenge the traditional dominance of Western powers. The big trade milestone. In 2024 to 2025, India and Africa hit a landmark number. According to Union Minister Kirti Vardhan Singh, bilateral trade crossed the $100 billion mark for the very first time. Just 5 years earlier, in 2019 to 20, trade stood at $56 billion. Doubling that in half a decade signals more than just growth. It signals a shift in priorities. For India, Africa is no longer just a distant partner, but a strategic region where business, politics, and development intersect. For African nations, India represents a trusted partner outside the shadow of colonial history, offering capital, skills, and collaboration. But trade isn't just about exchanging goods. Behind this figure lies a network of Indian investments that have been quietly expanding across the continent. From 1996 to 2024, cumulative Indian investment in Africa crossed $75 billion. That makes India one of the top 5 investors on the continent, alongside global giants who have traditionally dominated the space. The trade and investment numbers alone could have told a story of economic rise. But the deeper narrative is about how India is weaving its relationship with Africa across multiple layers: finance, infrastructure, education, and even humanitarian aid. Ports powering Africa's future. When we talk about Africa's economic growth, skyscrapers and highways often dominate the visuals. But the real backbone of global trade is far less glamorous: ports. Across West Africa in particular, countries are betting big on modernizing their ocean gateways. In Guinea, the Morebaya port is emerging as a critical piece of this puzzle. Built specifically to export iron ore from the massive Simandou mining complex, the port is linked to a new Trans-Guinean railway. This project is not just national infrastructure, it's a regional game changer. Backed by a joint venture between the government of Guinea, Rio Tinto Simfer, and the winning consortium Simandou, the port connects Africa's natural resources to global markets more efficiently than ever before. Why does this matter for India? Because India's hunger for raw materials like iron ore, oil, and agricultural goods is growing. Ports like Morebaya provide the infrastructure needed for India to secure long-term supply chains. And in return, Indian technology, construction expertise, and investments are helping African nations build stronger logistics backbones. This isn't just trade, it's co-development. Africa gets modern infrastructure. India gets reliable trade routes. The West, which has long dictated terms of African exports, now faces competition from a partnership model that looks less extractive and more balanced. Loans, grants, and scholarships. Trade numbers and port projects are only half the story. India has also built a reputation as a development partner across Africa. Instead of only focusing on high-return investments, New Delhi has poured billions into concessional loans, grants, and human capital development. Over $12 billion in concessional loans have been extended to African governments. Alongside that, India has provided $700 million in grant assistance, supporting projects that range from water supply systems to community health programs. These aren't just financial tools, they are diplomatic instruments. By funding critical infrastructure at concessional rates, India positions itself as a long-term ally rather than a short-term lender. Then comes the investment in people. India has offered 50,000 scholarships to African students. More than 42,000 of these have already been taken up. That means tens of thousands of young African professionals are being trained in Indian universities, exposed to Indian technology, and forming connections that will last decades. This is soft power at work. When these students return home, they bring not just skills, but also networks that tie Africa and India closer together. It's the kind of relationship building that money alone cannot buy. Standing together in times of crisis. Beyond trade and education, what truly cements trust between nations is solidarity during crises. And here too, India has shown a steady hand. In recent years, Indian relief operations have been dispatched to countries like Mozambique, Madagascar, and Mauritius. Whether it was floods, cyclones, or food shortages, India was quick to respond with humanitarian aid and disaster relief. This consistency matters. Unlike global powers that sometimes deliver help with political strings attached, India's actions have been seen as straightforward and responsive. These interventions may not make big headlines in Western media, but in Africa, they build credibility. When a partner shows up during tough times, the bond goes deeper than contracts and agreements. Climate, energy, and infrastructure partnerships. One of the defining challenges of this century is climate change. Africa, with its vast renewable potential but also high climate vulnerability, is at the center of this challenge. India has extended invitations for African nations to join two of its flagship international initiatives. The Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure focuses on making infrastructure systems resistant to climate shocks. For Africa, where floods, droughts, and storms regularly disrupt development, joining CDRI is more than symbolic, it's a practical step toward protecting investments. Meanwhile, the International Solar Alliance is India's global platform to promote solar energy. Africa, with its abundant sunshine, stands to gain immensely from this initiative. With Indian collaboration, African nations can accelerate clean energy projects, electrify rural regions, and reduce dependence on fossil fuels. By inviting Africa into these global frameworks, India isn't just talking about bilateral trade, it's helping shape Africa's role in global conversations about energy and resilience. That strengthens Africa's voice internationally while deepening ties with New Delhi. Africa's digital future, India's role in technology and startups. Africa today has one of the fastest growing young populations in the world, and mobile connectivity is central to their daily lives. Indian companies like Bharti Airtel have already become household names, providing affordable mobile services to millions across Nigeria, Kenya, and Tanzania. But the story goes deeper. Indian IT firms, many of which dominate global outsourcing, are now setting up innovation hubs in Nairobi and Kigali. Instead of just selling technology, these firms are training African coders, creating local app development ecosystems, and even supporting fintech startups. This is vital in regions where financial inclusion is still a challenge. Mobile money, microlending, and health tech platforms are receiving technical backing from Indian partners who understand the realities of developing economies. What makes this different from China's approach is that it's not just about physical infrastructure. It's about building digital knowledge that Africans can carry forward independently. Analysts note that by 2030, Africa's digital economy could add $180 billion to its GDP, and Indian firms are positioning themselves to be at the center of this transformation. The broader strategy. So why is India doing all this? The answer lies in both necessity and vision. On the one hand, India needs secure access to resources, energy, and markets to fuel its own economic rise. On the other hand, India also sees Africa as a partner in shaping a multipolar world, one where power isn't concentrated in Washington, Brussels, or Beijing alone. Africa, for its part, benefits from diversification. For decades, its economic links were dominated by former colonial powers or by China's Belt and Road. By engaging India, African nations gain more options, more bargaining power, and more pathways to growth. Together, India and Africa are building something the West cannot easily replicate, a partnership built less on extraction and more on shared development goals. That doesn't mean the relationship is without challenges. Issues of trade imbalances, project delivery, and competition with other global players remain. But the foundation is stronger than ever before. Looking ahead, with $100 billion in trade achieved and $75 billion in cumulative investments already in place, the road ahead is clear. More ports like Morbaya will be developed. More African students will graduate from Indian universities. More solar grids will light up villages. More concessional loans will tie infrastructure development to broader collaboration. And the numbers are set to keep climbing. India's own economy is projected to expand rapidly over the next decade, and Africa's population is expected to double by 2050. The synergy is obvious. Africa needs infrastructure and skills. India needs resources and markets. Both want a seat at the table in global decision-making. India-Africa relations are no longer just about diplomacy or ceremonial visits. They are now about hard trade figures, billion-dollar investments, scholarships that shape lives, ports that reshape economies, and aid that saves lives. The milestone of $100 billion in trade is only the beginning. What happens next could change global trade flows permanently. Will India and Africa together redefine what economic partnerships look like in a world that is no longer West-centric? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.